Let's bring in for more reaction and analysis our next guest. Charles Tannock is former British MEP of the Conservative Party. Charles, thank you much for being with us. Can I start with, I think, the obvious and easy question, though the answer may be more difficult to formulate. What are your thoughts on the passing of the Queen?
Well, I have to say I have very mixed emotions. I'm obviously in mourning with the entire nation, on the death of our sovereign, who has had a remarkable life. But I also think we have to celebrate the fact that she was an incredible queen. She gave us stability, continuity. I've never known any other monarch, and I'm almost 65 years old. And at a time of difficulty in our country, division after Brexit, high inflation, all these things, she was a force for stability. I think we're all going to miss that. And it will be a very hard act to follow for King Charles III. But I mean, she was the world's longest serving head of state. She overtook, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, the King of Thailand. She's served 7 years more than Queen Victoria. She's known, I think, 15 UK prime ministers, 10 US presidents, or 13 US presidents, and I think it's 10 or 9 presidents of France. So she's had a remarkable life. I think probably the last 2 years were very difficult for Her Majesty without her beloved husband, Prince Philip. I'm a doctor, a psychiatrist, and I know that long marriages, when there is the death of one spouse, often that affects you quite deeply and must have been very difficult for her on her own without her husband by her side. But I think as I said, it's a mixed situation. It's very, very sad to lose the only queen that almost all of us have ever known, who's been a great monarch, a great force, as I said, for continuity, stability, for dignity, as a role model to all of us. But at the same time, we have to also say that she had a very, very long, healthy, happy life, was a wonderful monarch, but also a mother, a sister, the royal family. She was always there for them. And so obviously my thoughts this evening are with the royal family, with King Charles III, with the princes. But you can be, not everybody in Britain is a monarchist, although I think she's incredibly popular personally. But I think even those who aren't monarchists will respect the fact that she gave an incredible, her whole life to serving Britain. And in fact, when she became queen, she said however long her life would be, she would always be there for the service of the nation and the people. She's had an incredibly long life, and she has served Britain remarkably well. And not just Britain, but of course the Commonwealth, but also she's actually the queen of 15 other countries. People forget that she's the Queen of Canada, she was the Queen of Canada, the Queen of Australia, New Zealand, countries in the Caribbean like Jamaica. And so people across the world will be mourning her as their head of state. But I'm just touched by the way that across Europe, the flags in Brussels were lowered to half-mast. The presidents of France, Italy, and so on have all been making amazing tributes to Her Majesty. So I think we have to see this as something also to celebrate the fact that she was a remarkable head of state, a remarkable queen, had a remarkable life, and we should be sad at her passing, but hope that King Charles will now be able to provide the same level of stability, continuity at a very difficult time for the United Kingdom.
You mentioned, Charles, that some people are Republicans. I think the most recent survey put the split at something like 60% for keeping the constitutional monarchy, 27% against it, the rest undecided. You mentioned the Queen's popularity. YouGov poll, 83% people had a positive reaction to Queen Elizabeth II. A real sense that this was someone who represented something extremely positive about being the Queen, about the monarchy, and about Britain. Clearly, a testament to her personal charisma in many ways, and I think you've really hit on that completely. Over the period of 70 years as monarch, there's been so much change in the UK, so many areas where perhaps she's faced crisis, where things have happened with the family, personal matters, international matters, national matters too. What would you pick on? Would you pick on something in particular as the moment that perhaps sort of might have marked those 70 years more than most? It's really a difficult question because so many things happened.
Well, I think, I mean, you've got to remember that she goes so far back, or did go so far back. I have to remember to use it in the past now because I'm still, in slight shock at the passing of Her Majesty. But she was there for Winston Churchill as Prime Minister in 1952. She met Eisenhower. She's been, she's seen so many changes. Back in 1952, before either you or I were born, people hardly, television had just started. There was no internet, but she was already a figure who travelled the world in an extraordinary way. I think she's gone around the world something like 30 or 40 times, I think she's done one thing very, very cleverly and professionally with huge dignity, is to stay out of politics. She's never allowed her personal views to be known by the general public, and I think that was what is part of the magic and mystery of monarchy. And at a time in Britain in the last few years when we've been divided, particularly after Brexit, in a way that I've never known in my adult lifetime, she's kept a sense of unity, purpose, and identity for the British nation, and particularly, the issue of the breakup of the United Kingdom. King Charles III will have to fight very, very hard to, keep the UK together and reunite the nation. I mean, I've said, slightly, I don't want to be political on a night like this, but there's every opportunity now for an entente cordiale, a reset with Europe, with King Charles III. He knows the continent well. The Queen was a great, lover of Europe. I mean, she never pronounced over Brexit, but she travelled frequently to Europe. And I was pleased tonight watching the news abroad that newscasters were wearing black in mourning at the passage of a British head of state in a foreign country which is not part of the Commonwealth. So I think a remarkable achievement, a remarkable iconic global figure, and the likes of which will be, very hard to follow and replicate. But I don't think one can identify a particular thing she did politically because that wasn't her role. Her role was one of stability and continuity, and to eschew anything party political, so that she kind of rode above all those divisions and maintained huge dignity and presence in the nation as head of the Commonwealth, as queen of her other realms, and so respected across the whole world and in Europe. I mean, she's been on state visits, to more than 100 countries. So an incredible track record, to be honest.
Charles Tannock, thank you so very much indeed for joining us and giving us your reaction to the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. As you point out, a remarkable life, well lived. Thank you so very much for joining us here in France 24. We appreciate your time. Charles Tannock, former British MEP of the Conservative Party.